your hands now. Get on the ground. Don't move.
You need to tell us what happened in there, Arthur. We already know most of it. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen.
The gavel struck, signaling the end of the trial. But for the victim's family, the pain would linger long after the prison van disappeared from view.
On a quiet November evening in Athens, Georgia, a woman's voice breaks through the static of a 911 line, shaking, breathless, terrified. Somewhere behind her, a man has just been shot. Somewhere behind her, another man is holding a gun and refusing to put it down. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, she is trapped, unable to run, unable to hide, unable to do anything but wait and hope the officers racing toward her get there in time. What none of the responding deputies know yet is that the man holding the gun wears a badge of his own. By the time the night is over, one man will be dead. A marriage will be exposed as something far darker than anyone outside had ever suspected. And an entire department will have to figure out how to arrest one of their own. It is just before 7 in the evening when a car turns into the driveway of a house on Old Jefferson Road. The man behind the wheel doesn't pause. He walks straight inside, and within seconds, gunfire erupts. 26-year-old Benjamin Lloyd Clover staggers out of the home he does not even live in, bleeding, disoriented, trying to put distance between himself and the man who just fired at him. That man is 32-year-old Trey Adams, a sheriff's deputy in neighboring Madison County. And instead of leaving the scene, instead of running, Trey turns the entire property into a standoff, keeping his own wife outside while armed officers begin surrounding the house. The first call reaches dispatch as a nightmare with almost no details attached. A shooting, a victim, condition unknown, and a woman near the scene who dispatchers can hear pleading, terrified, unsure whether she is safe to move. "There is no safe," she tells the operator. "I don't know where to go." The dispatcher tries to walk her through it, tries to get her low, quiet, out of sight, while patrol units race toward an address they know almost nothing about. For the deputies pulling up outside, this woman isn't just a witness. She is a second potential victim, one wrong move away from becoming the man's next target. When officers arrive, they find Trey outside near a vehicle, refusing every order to drop his weapon. Over and over, the command repeats. "Drop the gun, drop the gun." He doesn't. Instead, he retreats back into the house, and from inside, he does something almost no one expects. He picks up the phone and calls 911 himself. "I just shot somebody," he tells the dispatcher, calm enough to give his own name, his own address, as though he is reporting someone else's crime. With Trey now barricaded inside, officers turn their focus to two things at once: locating the man who was shot and getting the woman near the driveway to safety without alerting the gunman to what they're doing. When she finally moves toward them, she identifies herself as Charlotte Adams, Trey's wife. And the moment she says his name, everything about the scene shifts. This isn't a stranger holding a house hostage. This is a domestic situation that has detonated into something far more dangerous. And the man responsible knows exactly how a police response works from the inside. While one team stays with Charlotte, gathering whatever information she can offer through her shock, another team locks eyes on the house, watching for any sign that Trey might come back out armed. A third team pushes toward the spot where Charlotte says the victim is lying, uncertain whether they're about to find someone who can still be saved. They find Benjamin Lloyd Clover conscious, but bleeding heavily, unsure himself where exactly he's been hit. When they ask who did this to him, he manages one word: Trey. Paramedics move in as fast as the scene allows, working to keep him alive long enough to get him out. Back inside the house, Trey calls dispatch again, this time almost anxious to know how the situation looks from the outside. He insists he has no interest in hurting any of the officers surrounding the property. He asks, more than once, whether the man he shot is going to be okay. And it is genuinely unclear to the negotiators listening whether the concern is real or performance. What is clear is that Trey knows the language of a standoff better than most suspects ever could, because he has spent his career on the other side of exactly this kind of scene. That single fact reframes everything for the officers outside. They are no longer negotiating with an unpredictable civilian. They are negotiating with a trained deputy who understands their tactics as well as they do. As the standoff drags on, detectives sit down with Charlotte to start piecing together how the night began. Her account paints a portrait of a marriage held together by fear as much as love. She describes Trey as someone who, underneath a reputation as a good man and a solid deputy, has grown increasingly controlling, increasingly suspicious, increasingly unwilling to let her have friendships that don't run through him first. She insists that whatever Trey believes happened between her and the man he just shot, it was never what he thinks. Lloyd, she says, is a friend, nothing more. One of several people she talks to because she finds it easier to connect with men than with women her own age. She is adamant that nothing physical ever happened between them. And she is equally adamant that Trey's jealousy has nothing to do with facts and everything to do with control. Inside the house, Trey continues refusing to come out, even as a hostage negotiator tries to build enough trust to end the standoff peacefully. At one point, Trey apologizes, almost out of nowhere, telling the negotiator he never wanted to become this version of himself. The negotiator uses the opening, promising him that if he's genuinely remorseful, there's still a way through this that doesn't end in more bloodshed. But talk alone isn't enough to get him outside. It isn't until officers bring in someone from Trey's own department, a lieutenant he knows and trusts, that the dynamic finally shifts. Face to face with a familiar figure instead of a stranger with a badge, Trey begins to lower his guard. He sets the shotgun down, and in the seconds that follow, the surrounding officers move in and take him into custody without another shot being fired. Once Trey is secured, the property finally goes quiet enough for a full search. Officers clear the house room by room, checking for other weapons, other people, anything that might explain how a quiet Thursday evening turned into a homicide. Inside, they find nothing else of note. But outside, a truck sitting near the driveway tells a very different story. Broken glass, multiple handguns inside, a holster. The scene around the vehicle suggests this wasn't a decision made in a single instant, but something that had been building and possibly planned for long before Trey ever walked through that front door. With the scene secured and Charlotte on her way to the station for a full interview, officers stay with Trey to assess both his physical condition and his state of mind. In the back of the patrol car, stripped of the badge that gave him authority just hours earlier, he seems almost childlike in his uncertainty, repeatedly asking why no one shot him, insisting he never intended to hurt any of the responding officers. The deputies with him respond less like adversaries and more like men trying to talk a colleague back from the edge of himself, reminding him he still has a life worth living, even now. At the station, detectives separate Trey and Charlotte and begin 2 interviews that will end up telling 2 very different stories about the same marriage. Charlotte describes years of walking on eggshells, of trying not to provoke a man she loved but also feared, of an energy from him that made her constantly brace for his anger, even when nothing was wrong. She talks about a history that predates their marriage entirely, a period in her youth involving drugs and a dangerous crowd, and how Trey positioned himself, even back then, as the one person keeping her safe from herself. It is a role, she suggests, that never really ended, and one that slowly hardened into control. In the next room, Trey offers a mirror image of the same relationship, one where he is not the controlling husband, but the long-suffering protector, worn down by years of secrets and lies he claims Charlotte kept from him. He recounts finding out, long after the fact, that she had been drugged without her knowledge early in their relationship, and how the experience left him permanently on edge about her safety. He describes a more recent incident, weeks before the shooting, when Charlotte came home late from a night out and gave him an explanation about her whereabouts that didn't match what his phone tracking showed him. According to Trey, that night cracked something open that never fully closed, a suspicion that never really faded, no matter how many times she reassured him nothing was happening. Detectives let both versions sit side by side without confirming either one, waiting to see how the pieces from that specific night line up. Charlotte tells them that after leaving her own house, she went to have dinner at Lloyd's, something she admits Trey did not know about ahead of time. She describes a growing unease throughout the evening, a nagging feeling that Trey somehow knew where she was and was on his way, even though she'd told no one. Trey, meanwhile, tells detectives that he only found out where she was because he checked her location out of hunger and habit, intending to swing by and pick up food if she was somewhere nearby. What he found instead, according to his account, sent him driving past the house multiple times before he ever got out of the truck, peering through windows, trying to convince himself he was wrong before he finally let himself inside. Both of them agree on the moment that follows, even if they disagree on almost everything that led up to it. Charlotte and Lloyd were on the couch together, not intimate by her account, simply close, seeking comfort after a stressful night when the door opened and Trey was standing there. Charlotte says he was already yelling before she could explain anything, accusing her of lying to him again, accusing her of exactly what he'd suspected for weeks. Trey describes the moment differently, saying it felt like watching himself from outside his own body, as though something else had taken hold of him the instant he saw them together. He says Charlotte grabbed at him as he pulled the gun, and that he pushed her away, afraid of what might happen if the weapon went off with her that close. Then, by his own account, Lloyd ran, and Trey fired 2 or 3 times as he went, not aiming, arm outstretched, watching a man's back retreat through the front door. Detectives let Charlotte sit alone for a moment, and it's in that silence that she learns, scrolling through her phone, that Lloyd has died from his injuries. The reaction is immediate and unguarded. Disbelief giving way to grief in real time, still not fully able to process that a dinner invitation ended in a death. When detectives finally tell Trey the same news, something in him seems to collapse. He grows quiet, then visibly unwell, and for a moment the interview has to pause entirely while his condition is checked. Once he's stable enough to continue, Trey walks detectives through the rest of that night with none of the earlier deflection. He describes calling his cousin from inside the house, telling her he loved her, telling her he was sorry, convinced in that moment that he would not walk out alive, and strangely at peace with that outcome, so long as it meant no officer would have to be the one to end it. He describes pacing through the house afterward, passing Lloyd's bedroom, and seeing something on the nightstand that, to him, confirmed every suspicion he'd carried for weeks, though nothing about that detail changes what has already happened outside. He describes finally walking out, seeing a lieutenant he recognized, and feeling something in him give way enough to let the standoff end. In March of 2022, Trey Adams stands before a judge and pleads guilty to felony murder and aggravated assault in the death of Benjamin Lloyd Clover. He is sentenced to life in prison, with an additional 10 years attached for the assault. There is no trial, no jury weighing competing versions of a marriage gone wrong. Just a plea, a sentence, and 2 families left to live with everything that happened on a driveway on Old Jefferson Road. What remains afterward isn't really a mystery. Both Trey and Charlotte agreed on how the night ended, even while disagreeing on almost everything that led up to it. What remains is a much harder question, the one investigators are left turning over long after the case is closed. How does a marriage built on protecting someone curdle into the very violence it claimed to guard against? And how many warning signs passed by unnoticed before the people living inside it and the people around them finally see it for what it is?